keep going back to it, despite the fact that it just does not have the capacity to deliver on what it wants to give us and what we want from it. It's very frustrating because there are several top tier Pokemon in Advance that are quite difficult to deal with, and Camerupt manages to cover a lot of them, just by naturally being itself very effortlessly. And it seems that way anyway, until you get it into an actual game situation and it just lets you down. I mean, sure, it might have a decent game one way or the other, or one at some point, rather, but it's not going to do so at all consistently. And I'm not saying it's completely worthless. Very little is, but it is certainly not the kind of I certainly wouldn't place it, on par with something like Hariyama, which, is definitely not a super top tier Pokemon, not one you're going to be using consistently on every team, but it is the kind of Pokemon that has a very defined niche and is a very good performer when it gets into the right groove, or when it, on the right team. Whereas Camerupt doesn't have anything of the sort. Camerupt doesn't really have a certain style of team it fits on. I mean, it kind of does. It fits on these like physical / mixed offensive teams, but it doesn't really have as carved out a role as something like Hariyama might. Even something like Regirock is going to be more something you want to fit on a team more, and going to be actually able to perform better. So the reason why Camerupt is such a letdown is because of its stats. They're too low for what it wants to do. But before we get into that, let's jump into what it's trying to do in the first place. Well, Fire Ground is really good typing. I mean, I'm not saying it's Primal Groudon, but look at the fact that Will-O-Wisp is one of the most insanely oppressive move in this tier or any tier. And consider how, any fire type is already going to have that built in, right? The whole, Camerupt, being able to switch something in and not immediately take 12.5% from it, wonderful. I mean, even the bulky natural cure Pokemon, even Blissey doesn't like switching into Will-O-Wisp, in certain conditions. So, theoretically, Camerupt is a great Will-O-Wisp switch. And who's the number one Will-O-Wisp user in the tier? Gengar, of course. So, with Gengar, the thing about switching into its Will-O-Wisp is that its move pool really harasses every Wisp immunity. The best fire types are, of course, Charizard and Moltres, and they don't want to come near a Thunderbolt. And then there's other things like Natural Cure Celebi, which likes switching in to Will-O-Wisp, ish, but it also, because it has Psychic and it has Natural Cure for Wisp, for the Burn rather, and it has Recover a lot of the time, and it's got good bulk, but even then, it's got to fear Ice Punch. Now, I'm not saying, Gengar with Ice Punch is taking down full health Celebi effortlessly, but it does have to be wary of it, very wary. So, and even Blissey, Blissey doesn't like dealing with Taunt. So, then you look at Gengar's, other coverage moves like Giga Drain or HP Grass, so you can't pivot around it with Pert, Refresh or not, Swampert for those who are not as familiar with the lingo. That's something else to learn about competitive Pokemon. There's shorthand for everything. Anyway, so you can't use Giga Drain or Hidden Power Grass. You can't use Swampert against it. You even have to be careful with Pursuit Tyranitar against Whimsicott. It's very oppressive in that sense. And even something like Magneton, if you run Rest Talk or Refresh or something, which otherwise does very well against all those moves, you run into a Fire Punch Gengar, as was favored by UD, Fire Punch Will-O-Wisp Gengar, as was favored by UD many years ago, and down it goes. You can't even pivot around it with things like Psychic Metagross or Jirachi as easily. Even something like a Heracross, you're suddenly thinking, oh, well, I've got Guts, I've got Lumberry, I've got all this stuff, and then you just drop. So Uh, it's not. You can't really switch into Will-O-Wisp with the immunes to Will-O-Wisp in the tier, Charizard and Moltres, and the other fires, Houndoom and Blaziken are, very gimmicky. Not very gimmicky. They're less gimmicky than Camerupt, but they are gimmicky. But then the actual Will-O-Wisp switches in the tier, quote unquote, are still quite flawed. So the other Will-O-Wisp user in the tier is of course Moltres, which is running Fire Stab and HP Grass exclusively. So now let's look at this. So with Gengar, because that's the bigger threat on average by far, more easy to splash on a team, and generally a better Pokemon. Not to minimize how scary Moltres is. Then you are switching into it with Camerupt and taking on everything just listed. Will-O-Wisp, no problem. Taunt, who cares? Ice Punch, Thunderbolt, it's neutral to Ice Punch, and it is immune to Thunderbolt. It's neutral to Grass. It resists Fire Punch. There's nothing Gengar can do that actually threatens Camerupt besides Explosion. And if you have exploded your Gengar, then you no longer have the Gengar, and you have probably not taken down a more important target for the rest of your team, such as Blissey, or probably not Blissey if you're running a Camerupt, but let's say Celebi. You would absolutely trade Camerupt for Gengar every time. So there's that. But wait, there's more. I mean, you've got the neutrality to Moltres' Fire and neutrality to HP, or sorry, resistance to Fire and neutrality to HP Grass. So that helps into Will-O-Wisp as well. But again, more important than Moltres is Zapdos, because Zapdos is also terrifying to face. It's if you don't have a Blissey, then Snorlax gets worn down in sand horribly, and there are very few other answers. You can't run Swampert to deal with it at all because of HP Grass, but you can't get too comfortable against it with Celebi or even something like Flygon on more offensive teams, or even 1v1ing it with a Rock Slide Salamence necessarily, because it likes running HP Ice too, and if there's no Pert around, then HP Ice is wholly superior. So fitting a good Camerupt answer is just such a pain, because the ground types in the tier don't really like switching into Zapdos. Claydol, great Pokemon, but it gets stung by both hidden powers. So that's kind of the issue. It's almost GSC-esque in that the ground types don't answer the electric type, because one, Zapdos is flying, and two, it's got hidden powers for him. And that's where Camerupt comes in. This is not GSC. Zapdos is not running HP Water in Advance, and therefore Camrupt's neutrality to both HP Ice and Grass, in addition to its complete immunity to Zapdos' Mighty Thunderbolt, is incredible, right? So look at these traits you've got, and that's just defensively. What about when Camerupt actually hits the field? Well, once it actually hits the field, you have got a great dual stab combination, wonderfully complementary. You try to resist that Fire Stab with Tyranitar, the #1 Pokemon of the tier, eat a super effective Stab Earthquake. And flying types and Celebi especially, my god, trying to switch into the Earthquake, you don't want to eat Fire Blast. None of them do, or very few of them do. And it's also got, you can go HP Grass, you can go HP Ice. You've got the same potential. If you don't want to really go with the coverage thing, then you can use Toxic instead as a sort of middle ground. And of course, you have one of the best moves in the game in Explosion. So you are a wall-breaking tour de force on paper, because its offensive stats are also quite good. Its special attack is base 105, I believe. It's very good. And its base attack is a little lower, but still, or I think it's a little lower. Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's more than fine given that you've got Stab, Earthquake, and Explosion. Okay, so you've got a ton of great traits, and everyone who's played Advance, who's looked at Camerupt, has gone, oh my god, this thing is amazing. I really, really want to use this because it's got so many wonderful traits. Why wouldn't I just be able to slap it on, maybe not a ton of teams, but it should be a solid offbeat Pokemon that I can use not regularly, but a Hariyama tier Pokemon. It seems like it, right? Well, here's a letdown. Camerupt stats, they are bad. So Here's the first thing. It is slow. It is so slow. What you want to do with Camerupt is you want to switch it into these big threats and then offer big offense in return for the benefit of your teammates, your like physical attackers, your special attackers, your mixed attackers, whatever. You can be part of a mixed attacking chain with Salamence and T-Tar and Metagross if you like. Or you can just pile on, you can open things up for the D-Deers, whatever it is. Or, as was the case in this game, it was more for Calm Mind Suicune endgame. Because, again, you can pile on the explosions as well. If you've got lots of booms, Camerupt has, I think, historically done best on teams with lots of booms, where it's not about not about the Pokemon itself, in terms of switching into things, so much as the fact that it just has boom, and therefore it can sacrifice itself to take something else down. Because if you've got this lower value Pokemon and not much is really going to switch into boom, then that should be enough to get an advantage on the opponent, right? So if you are going to use Camerupt, you're probably going to want to just explode it as soon as possible before your opponent, gets too much mileage out of the fact that you are using a Camerupt. And it is a good exploder because none of the tiers explosion resists want to switch into it except Aerodactyl. But we'll get to that. So, yeah. The problem is it's so slow. So it's not just about being slower than Zapdos and Gengar, because that's a high bar to clear in this tier. But it's more about that mid-range that a lot of Pokemon in Advance occupy. It just breezes past it. Even slower Pokemon, Tyranitar, Metagross, and even slower things like, my god, Blissey and Milotic. Milodic's on the faster side, but even plus speed natured max EV'd Camerupt will not outspeed Milotic. It falls 2 points short. So if you want a chance to outrun some variants of Tyranitar and Metagross, which are major targets, then you need a lot of speed EVs. Not necessarily a bad thing, but then you look at Camerupt's other stats that are low, those regarding its special bulk. Now, it can be quite a decent special hit taker, but it requires a lot of investment. Again, the same problem as with the speed, and you probably are getting a sense of where this is going. You have to invest into a lot of speed, or you are picked off by a lot of Pokemon that you want to be going one-on-one with. Half the appeal of Camerupt is that both its stabs threaten Metagross, especially Fire Blast, which hits off its higher special attack stat and hits Metagross's lower special defense stat. It has Fire Stab, which is not blanked by T-Tar because of Stab EQ. But when this is so easily, Metagross outsped me, T-Tar outsped me, and no matter how fast you go with Camerupt, there are going to be lots of variants of both T-Tar and Metagross that are going to outrun you. So, with that in mind, then you need a lot of speed EVs, and you need a lot of special HP and special defense. Otherwise, Gengar's Ice Punch and both of Zapdos' hidden powers are going to wear you down uncomfortably quickly. So, especially with spikes in the picture. And remember, these Pokemon are paired with spikes a lot. Oh, and speaking of low special bulk, that whole thing about switching into Moltres, yeah, it's really sketchy because of how hard that flamethrower hits, or that overheat hits, or Fire Blast. So, with this in mind, then you see how Camerupt needs a lot of Spadef and speed. And also, if you're wondering why I only had 2 replays, it's because I was looking through tournament games, and I had to go back to Kalas's 2023 Invitational to find anything with Camerupt. It was not used at SPL at all. I could have looked a little harder, I'm sure, but I was looking through more recent stuff, and nobody's using Camerupt. Nobody used it in SPL this year, and there's a reason. It's that whole thing. It seems like such a cool Pokemon, but then you actually think of using it, and it's going to let you down a lot. At least if you're planning on looking for consistency, which a lot of players are. So, with that, you need the special defense, you need the speed, and at that point, you start saying, hey, what about those offenses Camerupt is supposed to offer? Well, yeah, you need a lot of special attack to be threatening. You need a good chunk of attack if you want your Earthquakes to actually threaten things. But mostly the special attack. But basically, as soon as you start taking... Camerupt's offenses are good, but as soon as you start neglecting them in favor of speed and bulk, then you are going to notice a drop-off. And what's even more than that, no matter how much you pump the offenses, Camerupt is still naturally going to be very limited because of that fourth move. Okay, you got Fire Blast, EQ, boom. Then without HP Grass, then you are going to have to blow up on Swampert. A difficult task concerning Protect. Offensive Swampert doesn't have Protect, but it also naturally, or not naturally, but it tends to outspeed Camerupt quite a bit. It's going to, and even if the bulkier Swampert, if you don't have a lot of attack investment on Camerupt, it's going to be difficult to actually take things down because that boom, it's strong, but if your target is bulky waters, it's not that strong. Also, pivoting into Camerupt often involves things like T-Tar, so you really have to be careful of that boom. If you have to hit the boom on the switch because it's so slow, other exploders, they generally are able to outspeed their target a lot of the time. Camerupt outspeeds its target very, very rarely, so you have to hit that boom on the switch. And when you are switching into things, Zapdos and Gengar, which pressure you so easily, so quickly, then you are forced into a predictable boom, and that is the exploitable one, because then your opponent can switch to the resist. Also, even if you do EQ the T-Tar on the switch, even though it's stab and super effective, it's not that strong to the point where you are actually really threatening the Tar. So T-Tar can't afford to step on one EQ in order to chase you out. And it's going to be blanking Fire Blasts and Explosions, even Hidden Powers a lot of the time. Speaking of Hidden Power, without HP Ice, then you are blanked not just by Salamence, forcing you to boom on it. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but with Camerupt as an Exploder, you're generally wanting to take out something that directly threatens your, let's say, DD Tar, so like a Water. And without HP Ice, you're not just blanked by Salamence, but you're also blanked by Aerodactyl. And seeing as Aerodactyl switches into pretty much everything else, then that's a big deal. You can go with Toxic, it's a good middle ground, but then you are playing the longer game, and Camerupt, as we have established with its poor bulk and susceptibility to spikes, lack of recovery, is not a Pokemon for a longer game. So it can be awkward. Not that it's bad, hitting Salamence is nice and all, but I find it just doesn't hit the field enough to get enough use out of the protracted strategy of Toxic. So, with Explosion, then you have a very... it's trying to do... It's not that it's trying to do too many things at once. It would be a lot more serviceable at this if it was just a little faster, a little bulkier, but it's just too low in this regard. And... Oh, that's another thing. So the exploding on the switch, that always applies to Milotic and Suicune, by the way, because you can never stay in on them because of the quad weak to Surf. But here's the real kicker. You know that whole thing about Zapdos and Gengar and how well it checks them? Well, it's not just getting worn down by Ice Punch and HP Grass and Spikes. Yes, it is, but you know what else it's horribly, horribly vulnerable to? Dugtrio. And when the Gengar to Dugtrio double switch is one of the most deeply entrenched strategies in Advance, or when the Zapdos Baton Pass, effectively a U-turn into Dugtrio, is its go-to move, then you have... Camerupt switches into Gengar a lot better because Gengar likes spamming Will-O-Wisp because it's such a spammable move. But again, you are terrified of switching into Zapdos because you will be ruined by BP into Doug. And in this regard, Camerupt is no different from so many of the other Pokemon used to check Gengar and Zapdos. And that is just completely totaled by a Doug switch, however it is executed. So, with that, then you see that, yeah, well, why am I not just using a better overall Pokemon as my Gengar Zapdos check? That also has offensive potential. Sure, it doesn't have all the traits of Camerupt. It might not even be as good as switching into Will-O-Wisp or T-Bolt, but it's going to be better overall if you're running something like Celebi. You know, better Pokemon overall, and even less vulnerable to Dugtrio in a lot of ways, because Camerupt is so irrevocably frail that it cannot, reconcile its Dug weakness whatsoever. You know, it doesn't have Solid Rock as its ability, unfortunately, because that does not exist yet. So, it would be nice, but very nice. Yeah, so another thing is that, its speed investment, no matter, God, I forgot just how slow it is, even with max investment with a neutral nature. You hit 179 speed. You know how crowded the 180s tier is with T-Tar, Metagross, and some Swamperts, even something like Skarmory. That is going to be significant. You think, oh, I got a fire type into Skarmory, and you're at low enough health and it just drill pecks you, and down you go. Or it gets that next layer of spikes, which is going to break your back. Whatever it is. And even if you're a lot of time you're not going to go max speed. Of course you're not, and that means you're getting outsped even by something like minus speed Claydol, to say nothing of all the non-minus speed Claydols. So, God, I forgot about the Claydol of it all too, because it switches into both stabs. It switches into EQ obviously, but it's got the bulk to switch into Fire Blast decently a couple times too. So. And if you're wondering just how pitiful, it's all flooding back to me. If you're wondering how pitiful that attack stat is, a bulky Tyranitar with leftovers, if you don't invest in attack on Camerupt, then you will struggle to 2-hit KO it through those leftovers. That is sad for a stab super effective Earthquake. My God. So, yeah. Yeah, I was also I was just checking some calcs, and the T-Tar one is big, but also 0 special attack Gengar Ice Punch versus 0 bulk Camerupt is doing 30% minimum. That's a lot. So you need that bulk. And 0 special attack Zapdos HP Grass is doing 28-ish to 33-ish. And that's 0 special attack. The one you're really scared of is the offensive one, which is obviously doing a lot more. So a lot of bulk needed. Dexa used to use specially defensive Camerupt and just say, you know what, I'm not outspeeding anything, let me just go all in on bulk. It's a decent idea, but I don't know, it's frustrating. And some players tried Toxic Protect, interesting strategy, but it doesn't really do anything to refresh waters, so it completely gets ruined. Some players like Choice Band Camerupt. I mean, this is interesting because we've established that the ideal way to use Erupt is to blow it up as quickly as possible. So, you get that one switch into Gengar or Zapdos, and you just blow up very aggressively. Hopefully you don't chunk a T-Tar. At least with Choice Band and, Max Attack, you're going to rip through even Tar. So, that's nice. But at least you get something out of it, because it's not like Gengar is going to be pivoting in. But, yeah. That is... Yeah, whether it's Choice Band or not, just get Camerupt in and blow it up quickly. Pair it with things like Regirock and Claydol that can pick up the slack defensively and also explode. Pair it with lots of explosions and, finish the job with something like Suicune, which is GSC Vaporeon-esque in that none of its checks are normal resistant. So if you blow up on something and it's only normal resist left, then Suicune is going to match up well. So, yeah, Lord, it's so frustrating. You want Camerupt to be great, but it's I don't know. If Jolteon was still more relevant, then maybe. But even then, I mean, Spikes, Roar, getting BP'd on with Spikes, it's gonna be ugly. Yeah, I don't remember what Camerupt was ranked in the viability rankings, but I would hazard that it is very, very low because it has not demonstrated anything really great or even decent, honestly, in over a decade. It's always used, once or twice, and then it's forgotten about for a long time. I mean, props to Mana or Ban Manaphy for using it twice in Kalos' 2023 iteration of the tournament, but decent, but yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, 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 my guys, ladies and gentlemen, what is good? We're here, we're back, we're powerful as usual. Actually, I think I'm Terra Dragon. Let's change this to the Terra Normaline. We're gonna rock with it. That Moltres could be a problem, but my Raging Bolt is a problem. Boy, Garganaclus back, the people's champion. People been calling, people been asking, where's Garganaclus Jam? Bring him back. And so here he is. He's back. Probably couldn't make this knockoff. You know who's really good here? Primarina. Primarina smokes. Draining Kiss would be so good. Do people still use Mindless Samurai? Is that something we're gonna have to be contending with? If that's the case. I saw one use Encore recently, so we're gonna just go with this. Ooh, the Shaman. That's a Shaman. But phenomenal lead. I don't guard super well against Shaman. I'm not gonna give up Dragonite because it smashes. Oh man, so this is down to a speed tie. This is wonderful because if he goes hard Moltres, because of the +2, I might one shot him. If not, the Moltres is gone either way. I mean, they're both contact, but like, yeah. Fortunately, we don't get the you know what. Yanmega, this boy is packing to protect. That's the only way you're making this play. So I'm curious what I want to do here. Or your choice card. Hard guard. If he's ticked, for me is like perfect. Right, it's a Shaman. I could Terra Steel. The issue is that it would open me up to a lot of other things. A lot of other things, you know what I'm saying? So the Molly is gone, which opens up my Dragonite a lot. I just need to force the Terra. By Terra Steel, I beat. A Terra Steel allows me to sub. They get as if he doesn't get the drop. Doesn't matter if I get any damage on my Raging. He can't guard against my Zapdos. This is actually Dazzling Gleam. Is he choice specs or something? Like, why would you Dazzling Gleam there? I'm guessing he was fearing that same matchup. Fair enough. I wonder if this is specs. If it is, then I do want some damage on it because this is a pretty big issue for my guard. I figured he went to a KO. Yeah. And it puts him in a position where, ooh, they had Earth Power. My Raging Bolt is nice, but not mandatory, you know? So, interesting to stare down the Tusk as the Primarina again. Hold positions that cannot be defended. The Rapid Spin there is actually a poor decision. Because you don't get any value out of it. You get the spin and you're fast and stuff, but you don't want smoke with my Primarina, you know what I mean? So now he's in a spot where he's gonna have to give up a mod if he goes hard Yanmega. He kind of has to leave the Tusk in here, which he doesn't want to do because of my Raging Bolt. But I mean, this Raging Bolt is useless here. So yeah, you have to hard Raging Bolt on a dam, and now my Dragonite has been freed, and I can go hard. I don't get the Samurai play. I mean, I'm guessing he was just anticipating this, but you have Great Tusk. Why would you even? Like, even if you go for what's that move called? The Omega is probably Orb. What's that move called? That I think Rocks plus. Yeah, if this shit is Sash. Ceaseless Edge, there we go. That's what I was talking about. The Primarina matchup is still awful, even if you get the Ceaseless Edge off. So what now? Are you actually in a worse position than you were before? So if I Calm Mind, I'm not going to because these things can run Encore, I learned. But the matchup is awful. Bruh, this freaking clown crit me, man. Okay, whatever. Just don't get it twice. Keep it to one. Yeah. So he commits to the Ceaseless Edge to get rid of my Raging Bolt, which wasn't a big enough factor to commit to that. He committed the Terra, which is great. Actually good. Gargu smashes. Like my Dragonite smashes. Good Iron Treads, but that doesn't solve anything. Dragonite late games. Treads. I don't need my Terra, so what we're gonna do is go Garganacl here, Iron Defense, and then this. Yeah, we saw Cure here, which covers any play he can make. He's gonna hard switch into either Yan, or he's gonna hard switch to what's his face, and because it's what's his face, if I get the recover off, it's over. So the people have been asking for the People's Champion to come back, and he's back, and he's doing what he does best. This is the same team from yesterday. I just modified it slightly, you know, so that it's not as holy. But my opponent was using a pretty unorthodox team, so that win there is no testament of, you know, whether the team has performed a little better or it's improved or not. Just needed a bit more backbone because it had the Darkrai and the Landers. I'm like, well, these seem a bit overlapped. The Landers never was doing anything. It was never offering much value. The Darkrai either is like for a Sash position. It was Scarf initially. I'm not sure if the meta has changed by the time that came to be, but yo, somebody commented something funny here like, yo, Jay, I don't even watch mods anymore. I just watch these. I don't play mods anymore. I just watch your vids because I always get some life advice or something like that throughout the video. And so I'm curious, is it, do you guys, is it the subtlety? Like, where does the life of, because I hear that all the time, particularly offline as well. Obviously I don't talk about mods, but you know, from the psychological angle, I'm the person everybody comes to whenever they're having a mental or emotional thing, because they can get free answers. Right, you don't have to go to a fucking, even those who do have therapists, because you know, my approach is more like, okay, if you're struggling with discipline or motivation in a particular area, basically if you can't get yourself to do something, or you can't get yourself to stop doing something, you know, how can I fix that within like between a couple of days and a month, right? So that's always what I've specialized in, performance psychology. And so I think a lot of that bleeds over into the Mon stuff. Just like how you have your BKC, you can tell BKC is like a very philosophical, like nerdy type, in a good way. We're all nerds, but meaning like long vids, like really niche, really old. Like you can tell he's a nostalgic type. Cause I mean, he's still uploading, and his the BKC audience is so committed. Jimmy D Cool, something like that, you know, brings his personality type to these short engaging things. Freeze Eyes, you know, we obviously have the Joeys and the Blunders, but we've been around for a while. You know, I'm talking about these new creators coming up. Pinka Cross is another creator I saw emphasizing more the competitive side, you know, the teaching part, similar to me. And then you have me, and people usually, you know, use either philosophy or something around that line. And so you know, or psych, right? The personality types bleed through the discipline. So I'm curious, what about, I just clicked the lead, truth be told. I didn't even think about the game plan in this. Primarina can destroy. This is a pretty bad lead for me. Would I Terra this? I keep that type. Yeah, I'd probably Terra this. Dead. I'll flip turn Mocha. Tinglu is an interesting pick, considering Iron Defense here, you're in trouble. Like, this could sweep him right here. That's a very odd decision. I wonder why people get so cocky, as if Garganacl isn't the one. Like, have people forgotten who I am? who this boy is, what this boy do. So if this Tinglu goes, which he's gonna allow it to, which is perfect because it's gonna die to the salt curing. Unless he has whirlwind, he does. Okay, fair enough. A good whirlwind. It's actually good and bad. It's good because I get to outspeed him and knock him out. And he's super susceptible to electric, but I didn't want my Raging Bolt in because, you know, he gets the edge, though he has to go to Mimikyu, which, you know, he probably didn't want to go into this early in the game. So, and then sacrifice Rockstrom. I mean, it's each their own, I suppose. My Raging Bolt is far too valuable to give up, so even if he SDs here, you play Rust just fine. We EQ into what just happened? Fucking what's that? What's it called? A red card. Annoying. Okay. He's gonna hit me with the that's annoying. More annoying in the sense that what he brought in, Garg is too good to have in. Like, as you see, Garg can 6-0 him with the right. Treads can't knock him out. I wanted Treads to EQ into Rocks if he SD'd. But he had the red card. I mean, what can I say? In fact, what am I talking about? I could just Iron Defense. Like, he's not 1v1ing this. I forgot he doesn't have, yeah. He missing that was it. He's fishing. I am mad at him. Let's go. Might survive this. Yeah, I had to. Okay. Man, Dark, you were the one. You were the one, bro. What's annoying is he still has Terra in hand, but I still have a significant matchup advantage in terms of the Pokemon I chose to keep. He gets wonked by most of my team. Primarina is the one though. Surprised he went to Samurott. Samurott's a horrible matchup versus Prim. What the fuck, bro? But yes, fucking justice. Get out of my face. Punk. Gambit is in. Gambit's an issue because he has Terra. I'm faster. Okay, that's actually really great. He did knock me out, but Enamorous, unless it's Terra Ground or something, or it's Calm Line. I mean, I've seen most of these be choiced. The Gambit is in issues that the Enamorous. Fucking Diancie. What would a Diancie do? What Diancie do? I got a couple routes. I could go hard Dose. The issue with Dose is that the Thunderous Kick won't drop the Diancie's defense, and it'll put me in a poor position. So this is one of those key moments of being like aware of the game state, right? Because it would seem obvious like go Zapdos and bulk up. It would seem obvious like, but if he goes hard at Amorous, I lose a lot of value. So I have to put myself in positions